Okay. Well, I want to say that this week switches up a little bit, and it will be switched up for week 3 through 7. And it's taken me a lot to get the pieces together. I am a big vision person. And so when it comes to the little details of like who goes where and what are we doing and blah, 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 it takes me hours to do it. And I think I've got it right now, as right can be, but you all will help me if it's not, and bear with me this week. Blah, 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 blah. And so all that was to say, I'm sorry I didn't have this to you earlier, like who's reading what and what that's going to look like this next week. And I've already got week 4 almost done, and I will finish all of that through week 7. So you'll have it ahead of time. And we're gonna do it together. But so I want to make sure, how about if I start with that, and then we can finish up with questions and thoughts about this past week. Is that all right? Okay, I am going to put screen share on and see if this will help. Okay, yes, thank you. I would really like to share my screen. There we go. All right, share. All right, there we go. I'm trusting you all can see this, yeah? Okay, good. So what is going to happen this week, if you remember the syllabus at all, and mine is all scratched up, there are the readings that everyone reads, and then there are lines next to these different readings, and some of them are from the study Bible. There's a section from the study Bible, a section for Miller and colleagues, and a section that has for Amer and colleagues. And there is a syllabus version 1.1 about to come out, because I found there were too many lines in a double, like I put week 3 into week 4. So I'll have that posted up in the announcement sections with what this is that I'm going over. So what happens is that this is what appears in the syllabus, but not with names or with that C1, C2, C3. The C stand for cohorts. And like this week, Jeff, Bruce, Jean, and Lucy, you end up with extra readings. Or Lucy, you're the only one on here. Or no, and Jean is too. So you're going to have this extra set of readings, but I promise I'll make up for it in the weeks to come. Maybe not. Well, I think the week after this is, yeah, the Pauline epistles. I won't make it up that week because it's about to get really out of hand. This is when we need more people, right? It's easier with a larger class. Here comes Jeff. Okay, so I'm going to let Jeff get settled in here real quickly. So this is what you would see in your syllabus, and I've put. I'll start with Lucy since Jeff isn't on here yet. So Lucy's going to have John's Gospel out of the study Bible, and then also out of Amer. And Jean, you'll have Luke's Gospel, the study Bible, and also in Amer. I'm not sure if Jeff is with us.
I'm not on here at all.
You're not?
No.
Oh, you know why? Because I gave you a new name. You're Amy.
Okay.
Invariably. I left Shelley off at first. I'm like, wait a minute, there are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Who? Oh my gosh, Shelley's not on there. And then Ashley, I'd had you in 2 originally, but you were Amy. Or maybe you were maybe, I don't know. Jeff, good morning. I realized how early it is there this last week. I was thinking about you, and thank you all the more for being on here early, really. So Jeff, what we're going over is these next weeks 3 through 7. It just, because we're reading, having to go through so much, I've assigned the readings as it's said in the syllabus. and then have also given you cohorts, put you into cohorts around that. So you can see hopefully on this screen that you will have Mark's gospel in the Bible, and then also you're responsible for Amer and colleagues. Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you what you'll do with these. Oh, okay, there's, oh, except that Amy is now Ashley. You know, it's like Tyler last semester. He was supposed to be Trey and Trent and something else. I rename people every now and again. So okay, so here's what happens. You of course read the readings to be read by everyone, and then you read your assigned readings. Now in the study Bible, really what that means is that you're looking at your footnotes, those study notes that are in the Bible. And then you're going to have to read all the cohorts, but only participate within your cohort. But what we're doing here is, of course, covering the Gospels plus other these other books that are associated with the Gospels. So the Q Gospel is related to Matthew and Luke, and then you get the Science Gospel is closely related to John. So that's why Ashley and Marcia and Lucy are together in that cohort, because you're going to bring us the wealth, or you know, this beautiful piece to John. And then Bruce and Jean, and where else are we? And Shelley and Sarah and Jerome, you bring these pieces then that go with Matthew and Luke. And so that brings in the Q Gospel, Shelley, that you're being assigned, you've been assigned. And then Jeff and Robin, I think this is right. You guys are on your own here. So Jeff, you've got the study Bible and Amer, and Jerome is going to have Miller and colleagues. And this is what you'll be writing on. The two forums. The first is, what key ideas or concepts in your readings do your course mates need to know? So what are you finding in your pieces that is important for others to know? Basically, you're reporting on what is just too much to read. And you may have other references, other information that you've gleaned outside of your particular assigned readings that you're welcome to bring in if you'd like. And then the second forum is, how might we apply this idea, this concept, to help introduce a not yet Christian to Jesus, and or interest a no longer Christian to give him another try. And with this, I'll say that not everything you read is going to fit and answer those questions. And here's why I say that. This is those important learnings and reminders. There are strong reasons people are not yet and no longer Christians. One of the more fun exercises we did in one of our house churches in Seattle was, we worked with them the people in our house church, for about 6 weeks to be able to communicate their faith. Right? If you know, why is it that you follow Jesus? Why is it that you believe in Jesus? What is that? And they had their stories, everything. And we had a friend from post-grad school, and he was a former atheist. And he said the most fun he had in college was sitting in the cafeteria eating Christians for lunch. And so he knew, you know, all this stuff, and he knew how to counter it. And he then, of course, had very clearly his own reasons for being a Christian that he was able to share. And so one by one, over the course of 2 weeks, each member of the house church shared their story. And I was, at one point, I was like, what did we just go over for the last 6 weeks? Because those who had been Christians themselves for a long time just moved into this, well, Jesus will save you and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, where's your story? How are you helping them? And one by one, he ate them, for lunch. It's like, okay, let's try this again. So, comes back. There are strong reasons people are not yet or no longer Christians. And the more you're around them, the more of those stories you're going to hear. And the weirder the stuff is that comes back to you. And if somebody has a DR period in front of their name, all of a sudden they are an authority, or REV period in front of their name, they are an authority. And the crap that people put out in the name of the Bible, or what is wrong in the Bible, and why you need to read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and believe that more than what is in the Bible. It's amazing, and I'm always like, okay, well, where are you reading this in the in the Greek? Show me the Greek for it. Show me this. Where are you getting that? What's your authority? Well, Dr. Mickey Mouse said it, and there's hardly any way to counter that. So it's really frustrating. I have to tell you, when I worked at the pagan bookstore and people would come in, and this one woman she is a no longer Christian, and it really does come down to church for her and her experience into church. But she has fabricated this whole myth and mythological construct around Jesus and not Jesus and whatnot. And when someone started asking about Jesus or whatever, I would do everything to get over there in front of Michelle, so she had no chance to fill these questioning heads with stuff. So that's why I'm asking this. What just or saying, it may not, everything we do may not apply. They don't want to hear how sinful they are. They have no concept of what it means to be saved, except for older folks remember being knocked on the door and someone saying, if you were to die tonight, do you know where your eternal soul was to go? They don't relate to that. They're not scared. Their life is going okay. If it's going okay, they have these questions they can't answer. They've got itches they can't scratch. They have problems they can't solve. They're desperate, but nothing's working for them. And that's where Jesus can hit that road for them. So to talk about being saved, that doesn't matter for them. And I'm talking in generalities. Okay, that's not everybody. It's some of us respond very well to the Romans road, and you can follow verses in Romans to talk about how we're separated from God and how Jesus has come to reestablish that relationship. Some people respond very well to the Romans road journey, I guess I would say. You take and you start at one of the verses. I have it written in my Bible. I can't do it off the top of my head. My favorite Bible that I use all the time, my falling apart Bible. Anyways, you start at one verse, and then you go to another one, and I know you cross back, and then you go and follow through in the book of Romans. Some people respond very well to that. There are different pieces, but for people that are no longer Christians, they don't care about being saved. A lot of them will tell you, but I've been baptized. I'm already saved. Okay, our theological churchy language really means nothing to them. Many of them who've been in the church have already rejected it. So we want to avoid theology, if you will, when talking to not yet, no longer Christians. Much of what we read, particularly the stories in the Gospels where we are this week, provide examples of what Jesus and God have to offer and what they're offering to folks and to the earth and to its inhabitants. Right. So when you're reading and you're looking at the scripture, kind of think, how could this particular story, like the Samaritan woman, right? What might that say to someone? And I relate to that woman. I lived on the streets, and you do a lot on the streets to survive. And I had an ex who used that at every turn that he could. He threatened me with my children and said no court would ever give me my children because of all of this history and brushes with the law and everything else. And so to be told, you're forgiven, nothing, that you may even be there, but you're there, but it's past and it can be past. Now go and tell. And then to be able to share that. My first minister, when I was able to express my desire to be a minister, he told me not to tell my story because people wouldn't understand it and they would never recommend me for ordination. And so, yeah. So that's a kind of damage. And for a variety of reasons, I knew I was so clear, but I played that. It wasn't a game. It was just the way you had to do. So then you get to hear the stories like the Samaritan woman. And now it's clear. So listen for those pieces, a not yet Christian or somebody who was a Christian, but the church would hate them now. One of my dear friends, I've been working with her for 2 years. This is one of those, you pray for people and you pray for them and you pray for them and you get to see the breakthrough. And one of my friends, I'm seeing the breakthrough, and she went searching out a church, went to 5 different churches, and she's ended up in the Catholic Church because friends, she's in the Catholic Church because the disciples minister in her town was preaching to the congregation that day and how bad and unfaithful they were, and they wouldn't do this and they wouldn't do that. As she called me, she said, why should I go back there? And I had told her specifically because they had a new pastor who was on the search committee that called me here to Mid-America. And I'm like, Jimmy, what are you thinking, man? What are you thinking? But that's the stuff that, is drilled into us. So anyways, boy, am I tangenting this morning. So, we have to be so careful what we're saying and how we're reaching people, but here was Beth, and she had that kind of a desperation. And the reason she had been to the Catholic Church, that was the only church she knew, but she went when she got married. Her husband, ex-husband, was a Catholic. And because of all the stuff that went on, and he was connected to to Catholicism, then the church wasn't going to work. And she's been out there searching. She has such a spirit. The Lord has such a hand on her. She ended up in the Unity, in Unity congregations. Actually, she worked for Unity. She was an editor for their publishing house, but she's seen the depth. And, I know it's the prayers and it's that movement, it's that willingness to talk to her. I did a series of workshops she came to, and it was, why did God create you? And we had a long talk after one of those, and she said, I don't believe that God created me. And the idea of being created for something, that makes no sense to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, after all these years, I'd never heard that. So how now do you talk to her, right? So she's, praise God, she's in that Catholic Church. They've got a younger priest and an older priest. She's built a relationship with that younger priest who's just able to talk to her, and she loves ritual. And so she gets that ritual and rite, and she's singing in the choir, all of these opportunities. So churchy language, that she didn't go there because of the churchy language, right, or the theology. Oh yeah, and because there we are, we're on that paragraph. It's also, that talking, making Jesus real is this other huge part. Where do you connect? How do you talk beyond the Catholicism and the berating sermons and that language, telling me how bad I am? Not yet and no longer Christians. When you see that N-Y, not yet, N-L, no longer Christians, have no need for the church or institutionalized religion or institutionalized faith. So offer them Jesus, not the Christ. Okay, there's a difference between that. The Christ is part of that. It's almost the mythological part when you talk about the Christ, you have to talk about the Messiah, you have to talk about the Savior. You see how I'm getting deeper and deeper into the language there. So when I'm saying offer them Jesus, you can offer Christ around there, and you want to move them into the Christ, and that's huge. But Jesus is who they can see and touch. And we tend to, I'm not sure if I've said this in this course yet, we tend to relate to one, or usually to one primary member of the Trinity. And for not yet Christians in particular, the one that they can relate to most is Jesus, because he's man, he's human, he's tangible. And from there, it's not too hard to skip over to Spirit, because he remains with us through his Holy Spirit. But God's a little harder to grasp. And then think through why this key concept that you're going to put out there is an important one for our cohorts to know as we step up as we step up our service in our congregations and for the kingdom. Why are you putting that out there, right? Why is what you're saying is important for not yet, no longer Christians to know? Why is that important? How can your it's your course mates, not your cohort mates. Does it make sense? Jeff, please.
One of the things that I'll be looking for, I'm kind of hoping we can flesh out, is intentional rejection of Jesus. And I've gotten thinking about that quite a bit over the past 5-6 years, where the person can state, I'm a follower, but none of the thinking, none of the feeling, none of the words, none of the behavior is reflective of being a follower. But it's so unacceptable to say that intentionally I'm not. But I've experienced a couple kids that I worked with who came and told me, kids that had been abused, molested, bullied, who stated, I have found a new way of living. And it is, I feel bad about this. I hope it doesn't hurt your feelings. I hope you still like me, that kind of stuff. But it's to reject Christ and embrace Satanism. Because, and in a nutshell, what they were trying to say was, I'm tired of being prey.
Ooh.
I want to be one of the predators that doesn't get preyed on anymore.
Ooh.
Satanism offers all of the tenets I'm looking for to no longer be a victim. And your Christ was a victim. And it was like, wow. An in your face kind of honesty. I'm rejecting Christ, and I'm intentionally and openly rejecting Christ. It was an interesting window for me, but then how I started thinking, well, there's lots of people that make that decision, but they're not going to make that statement, because that statement is just a red line that they don't want to cross, but they're still going to live in that manner. So that's part of what I've been thinking in terms of with some of what we're going to be covering. And I've been watching and listening to everybody, for, okay, what do we do about that?
Nothing.
Yeah,
People, and this is where I get into it. Like, we're supposed to show compassion. God shows love to the just and unjust. And I think sometimes we forget that. Yes. But we also have free will. So we can say, me and a psychologist were talking about this, about how religion and all that intertwines. And he had a very profound statement. He said, some people don't want to be close to God. He said, for you, he said, you enjoy it. He said you would run right to it and be like, oh, I'm going to bask into the light and it's wonderful. He said for others, this is like an electric shock.
Mm.
He said that, no, this is painful. He said, you have to think about it. The Bible says man hides their deeds in the darkness because the light will reveal it. Now, I'm not going into the sin. He's just saying for some people, they enjoy being in the darkness. And he said, take it as a psychologist that has worked with people. There are some people who just do not want to be well.
Right.
He said, it sounds weird. He said, it is what it is. And I think sometimes we have to realize we have free will. We can choose to accept or reject.
Yes.
And those people that go, I don't need Jesus. You know what? I don't need a savior. You just go, okay, so how's the weather where you are? We're standing in the same spot. Well, it might be different, 5 days. You just change the subject. You just leave them alone. Jesus didn't force anyone to believe in him. You had to
one of
come.
those kids. What they told me was, I'm intentionally doing this, and I do believe. I believe everything that is described in the Gospels, but I have no. How did he phrase it? I have no desire for eternity. He said, and it was, from a counselor perspective, it was like, I'm into the here and now, and the here and now is so painful.
Yes.
I no longer will be a victim. I'm going to be the apex predator, and I don't care about eternity. And it was like, with no conversation, just listening, and he had already got this all worked out, and it was kind of like, oh no, yeah. That's an intentional, this is where I'm going kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're not open, so
Yeah.
And that's any field. When you, even in education, you have some people who fight it, where I will purposely stay ignorant. That you pray for those people and you say, may God bless you and still have mercy on you. And it's just like the whole fishers of men. Sometimes you pull up fish and you go, yep, that one's going back out in the ocean. I think sometimes we get so paranoid, like, but you're gonna die without Jesus. You're gonna and stop and just say, you know what, that's their choice. God gives us the ultimate freedom. And part of freedom is that you're gonna have to take it that people are gonna reject you. Oh well.
It's this, I need to post it. Again, you all who were in class with me last session, you saw the ways that we pray for people, right? The 4 ways we we have people that we're praying for who either don't have a relationship with Jesus. I found that for Christians, they prefer to say who don't have a church home, but if that's what you have to say to your church to get them to do this, then who don't have a church home, and if they haven't been to church in the last year, then I wouldn't say really. If they haven't been home for the last year, they're fair game, right? You're not. You can't steal a well-fed sheep. So if they're out there, they don't have a church home. So you're praying for them, and what you're praying for an opportunity to for an introduction, to introduce them to Jesus or reintroduce them, and so you pray for an opportunity. You pray for courage to extend that opportunity. You pray that God will knock you upside the head so that you recognize the opportunity when it is presented. And then you pray for favor. And favor means that it's not that they'll say yes. You're really not praying for them to say yes. What you're praying is that even if they say no, that they won't hide every time you walk down the street, and you keep going, right? So it's that you'll still have favor, you'll still be in proximity for another opportunity, but it's God who designs that opportunity. It's not you making the opportunity. And if that person, and you pray about who you put on your list. So, who is it that's so heavily on your heart? So if there's that rejection, as you're saying, Lucy, there's that rejection. Okay. So when, just kind of being aware for another opportunity. And you're running with a six of, 5 people or so, 5 or 6 people, and that person's name may not come up, but you'll again, someone else's name may come up. And this probably sounds a little crazy. It did the first time I heard it. And the instructor who was presenting this said, and he said, well, no, he didn't say it sounds crazy. He said, I know you're thinking this is going to happen, but I'm going to tell you, if you will do this and you'll be faithful about doing this, you're going to need another sheet of paper to be praying about. So, I had it, it's, it's on a, tri-folded little deal. I had names. I had to keep adding names all around. I had them all around the outside, the prayer piece. I had them on the inside. And I can't tell you how many of those I've gone through now over the past 17 years. It really does work, even to the point where people come to you, right? And it's like, that's why I added that he didn't have, but I added, please sort of knock me upside the head, so I know when the opportunity is there, because I've just missed it so many times. And it may not be your church, or may not be the one who gets to nurture them. My former neighbor Rachel is one of those. But she came by the house, she moved away, and she came by the house to tell me that she was going to the Church of Christ that's down around the corner. And knowing Rachel, I just could not imagine she would be in a Church of Christ. She's loving it, and they're loving her and loving her little girl, and she's pregnant. She came by the house to tell me she's pregnant. I hadn't seen her in over a year, but there's that little relationship, and God has just taken it and run with it. And I only get the reports every now and again. So I'm on that tangent again, and the Jeopardy theme went off. Counting time. Jeff, you said something that was reminding me. There at the Pagan Bookshop, there were more people enrolled in the witchcraft apprenticeship than there were in Sunday schools and all the disciples' churches. We have 5 of them in the Columbia area. I think it's 5. It may be 7 when you do the outer. It's 5 or 7. I'll just say 5. In all those Sunday schools, there were more people enrolled in those apprenticeships. Apprenticeships last for 12 months. You have homework, big time homework every week. You meet with the high priestess who's leading the apprenticeship. You meet with her once a week. I mean, it is intense, really intense. You have your cohorts that you're off doing your stuff with, and 99% of them are former Christians, no longer Christians. And Jeff, what struck that in me is that this isn't working for me. And so church, religion, God wasn't working for them. So they're out there doing spellcraft. And I kept trying to think into this, and there's a retired disciples minister, and she's the one who introduced me to the owners of the shop. And she used to tell me she was a Christo-pagan. And at one point I told her, hey, you crossed over, you're a pago-Christian. And right now she's a pagan. I mean, she's a pure and simple pagan. And she's in the apprenticeships for witchcraft. And Shelley, I'm looking at you. Yeah. And she had, she was originally my spiritual director. And then we got to where we were doing, more sharing spiritual direction, and the more direction that way she was going. And the more she told me that she said, this stuff of just sitting back and waiting for Jesus to move. The reason you're not seeing this is because you're not taking responsibility for this. And I would say to her, I move on his time, and I leave things to his time, but I have to have clarity. Some of you, again, you've heard me say this over and over again. When do I know to move? How do I know to move? How do I know the decisions that decision. It's when I've got that clarity, you know, in your knower what it is. And the difference between being a Christian and being able to do that is that you're working, as I say, on God's time, on Jesus' time, within his will and his way, rather than taking your will in your way and doing whatever you can to formulate that and make it happen, right? We get to see things manifest. We get to be part of these things that manifest, but they make things manifest. And I just kept saying, well, if this is what you're doing a spell for, why do you need that spell? And why do you need that spell? Because like, obviously that one's not working and that one's not working. And before COVID, they would have all these guests come in, speakers, weekends. I would go work the weekends because they said all of them wanted to be in the workshops and they needed a good Christian who would run the shop. So that was me. And, you know, there were so many times I'd just be out there in the shop praying. Bill would come. There were a few times he came and he said that spiritually it was so thick and icky he couldn't stay. He said, I have to leave. And I said, if you have to leave, I need you to stay and pray. And one night, I think the last night he was there with me to do it, they were doing the ritual for the like the graduation to the next level, the next apprenticeship level. It was 6 is the highest, so they were going from 5 into 6. And I asked him, please, 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 be here just holding this. And he was there for a bit. And you know, you're just asking for Jesus to. Okay, and I'll tell you my last real scary story about all that. This might be the scariest it's been for me all along. And her name is totally escaping me. Some of you may know this. She's a demon, seen as a demon goddess. And it's said that she preceded Eve, that she was actually the first woman that God created. And so was Adam's first wife. And she did not want to be subjected. Oh my gosh, I can't.
Lilith.
I think it starts with an L.
Lilith.
Yes, Lilith. And so one of the owners had this vision for a Lilith ministry where we were going to, you know, help women in transition and whatnot. And they asked me if I would be executive director of this Lilith ministry. And I said, okay. And so I'm trying to figure out, you know, how do you bring God into this without saying this? And so they sent me to this weekend that was about Lilith. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn about Lilith. Well, I get there and it is a weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you're learning about Lilith, but there are also these rituals that are going on. And so one of them was really cool. There are directions, you know, of the earth. There are different elements, and you call in the elements. And one night you went like to the fire element, and there was a gift that had something to do with fire. It was just kind of cool. I thought, wow, I wonder how we could use this, you know, in church. That, you know, just the ritual part of it and shaping it in a different direction. And but we got to Saturday night, and the whole piece is about calling on Lilith. And I kept asking this question. I've asked this over and over again, and I have not gotten a definitive answer. And I think it's because people don't exactly know what the heck they're into. So do you believe that Lilith was a god? You know, like Apollo or Paulus, whatever, you know, these different gods and goddesses. Athena, Zeus. Do you believe she was a god believed by somebody else? Do you believe that she's a god in line with God, you know, a demigod or an equal god? Or is she a like an archetype, that somebody that you admire, a strong woman, you know, will stand up, a feminist in her own way, who's very strong, very powerful. And so she's somebody that you would want to emulate. But nobody can answer that question for me. Obviously, she's an archetype. But these other two pieces, you know, when you call her name, when you invoke her, like you do in spell work, when you invoke her, do you do that with an expectation that she's going to do whatever it is you're asking her? When you invoke her, into a circle in a ritual, do you expect her to show up? And I got in there Saturday night, and that, it's dark and people are dressed, they have all these flowy clothes and different things on, and they're invoking her. And I got so scared in there. And because I can't answer that question, do you believe? I believe in demons, though. I believe in minions. I believe that when you call upon Satan, that he will come and he will appear. And if Lilith is who her archetype is, and is who, has been said that she is scary as hell. And she is hell. And I don't want to be part of where that. So I was in a position that I didn't feel I could leave without losing what relationship that I had built and been building with several of the people that were there, including the pagan disciples retired minister, and whom I still pray for. And she was one of the reasons I just didn't want to walk out there. But I invoked Jesus. And that's why I just kept saying it. I'm talking to him and asking him, I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. And I don't know if this can happen, but I know that you can stop whatever is from happening. And I ask you to please intervene and to, if at all possible, show yourself, but at least show yourself to Lilith, if she is who they think she is and who they want her to be. Please show yourself to her and scare her away. And I don't think that she was there, that the next day they were still talking about her and not what they had experienced with her that night before. But they're looking for something that they didn't find in Jesus. And what Jesus could do and the archetypes and who he walked with, that's a lot stronger to me, that he walked with, that he could even, there it is, he could even turn his nose up to a woman and say, dogs, you're a dog. And yet she had that power, that with wherewithal, not a given power, but to speak and to move him. And for him to say, okay, right, yes, Ashley.
So one thing Jeff said about the person being focused on the here and now, when I think about Jesus, I think about all the things that he talks about that are here and now, how he wants us to behave in the here and now. And I think, as a millennial and as someone who has friends with people who are very against going to church, what they're focused on is what the church is not doing, which is being intentionally involved in justice things and things that actually help people. And so when we sit and talk about all of these spiritual things, it's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me, because I'm alive right now and I don't see the church working in the way that it says it is or claims to be. And so I feel like in a lot of my focus is more about the here and now, because I think that that's what is reaching people in the way that we're looking to reach people. So that's just been going in my head. So I wanted to say it before we left.
That's awesome. Thank you. We used to wear bracelets. I still have mine, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And I always wanted a bracelet that said, what is Jesus doing? WIS, I don't know, I can spell WIJD. What is Jesus doing? WIJD, that's it. Because it is what he is doing. And, seeing that, it's, I don't know, Pee-wee's Playhouse, and he would go, he had this scene that went, connect the dots, da 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 da, and he'd da 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 da, and he'd make things out of it. And so people have pieces of it, right, and they're seeing it, but we have to connect the dots in there to paint that picture, show the picture. Is it at all possible? My son prayed for a motorcycle, or he didn't pray for it, he wanted a motorcycle, and he made this big deal, and the pieces came together, in amazing ways for that motorcycle to manifest. And he's like, oh, Mom, that was so lucky, blah, blah, blah. And I said, do you think Jesus had anything to do with that? And he's like, no. And I said, are you sure? Because Jesus wants to fulfill the desires of our hearts. And he heard you over and over and over again. Is it at least possible that maybe Jesus had a little hand in it? He said, I guess he could have. Yeah. So, yeah.
You know, Ashley, I just wanted to piggyback on that. And I think, you know, I have a code, so excuse me. I like church history, and most people don't realize, well, this is part and parcel of the Reformation and how it got off the rails. And, you know, we don't really explain to people how we became so, you know, originally it was just we were mad at the Pope about some things. And then it manifested into something entirely different where, you know, going back to that psychologist, we were talking about religion. He goes, I hang around the Catholics. And I go, okay. I said, I'm open. I'm open to the criticism. Tell me why. And he goes, because at least they still act like it's a supernatural religion. And I had to like sit back and go, but you know, I have friends, you know, because in my area there's a lot of Catholics. So, and you know, I went to a Catholic school for a couple of years, and I didn't realize the difference between Protestants and Catholics. You know, I'm just born into this religion. And I'll tell you what, from Catholic school, I didn't think they got a hold of me. They did. And I started having conflicts with the Protestants, and not knowing why. I just knew that there's something different, and I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until someone sat down and explained to me, okay, you know, this event happened 500 years ago, and it kind of got a little screwy, and we kind of missed the point. And you have to be able to say, okay, we don't do well with where is God when things go wrong? Where is God where it hurts? We don't do well with this. That's really part of the piece. If, you know, Jesus was very compassionate to people who were hurting. Now, but also you have to realize that this is the kingdom of God coming near to you. Some people don't want it, but that doesn't mean that we don't offer it. And it's not more than just when you die and you know, where will your soul go after you die?
Right.
That's very Cold War thinking. I always say that to my congregation. I said, okay, every movement, even if you look like a QAnon and stuff like that, it is birthed in that time, and you need to know what's going on politically. So I said, now you have to go back to the 1920s and what was going on, that Billy Graham broke from the very conservative church, and he's going around, you know, because people were already falling out of the religion at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So he's going around trying to do a revival. That's what he's trying to do. And you have to say, okay, so who are you listening to when it comes to what is Christian? And, you know, what era are you talking about? So in my congregation that's older, they talk about Billy Graham.
Oh, yeah.
And they talk about, but he drew the crowds to him, and, you know, and he was such a great speaker. And I said, if you thought that there's a really true possibility that a nuke was going to fall on you tonight, and that the next morning we're going to be in the middle of, you know, nuclear mass mutual assured destruction between Russia. I said, someone coming up to you going, if you die tonight, where would you be? Is going to appeal to you. Right. So, you know, when I took evangelism, we, you know, even, you know, Chris's Bill said, we know that doesn't work anymore.
Oh, right.
It doesn't work anymore because, you know, the Cold War's over. You know, we don't think about, I mean, and if you go back and look at the Cold War and how crazy it was, you can see why people bought into that.
Sure.
Okay, so now the Cold War's over.
Yeah. Right.
So now what do we do to attract people to the faith? And that's always going to be our struggle, especially in America, because we do church very differently. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that you have to say is that our church shifts with whatever's going on in society. And society is in flux really bad. So it's really hard to be able to sit down and say, And what does psychology say? Because archetype was not a word before Freud and Jung. We would not have said an archetype. So, okay, Lilith is an archetype. Do you even know what that means? Guaranteed they're going to say to you, no.
Actually, those folks will, yes.
But they'll just say like what does they call it? The hero's quest or something like that.
Oh, sure, yeah, exactly.
They're not going to actually say, have you read a book by Carl Jung? They will look at you and go, he wrote books. Yes, he did. Do you actually know what his philosophy was? They're just listening to popular psychology. So if you're not in the winds of like, what the heck is even popular psychology saying right now? It can really get off the rails. And that is what they're listening to, or they listen to. Unfortunately, some of our Christian people who are not very good at this have really big mouths. So they're on Twitter and they're doing the flame wars and stuff like that. That's what your kids see. And right. You're going like, oh my God, I cannot believe that they just did that. But they're the ones that have the mouthpieces right now. So that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah. You remind me or make me think self-help. A lot of folks say that pop psychology is self-help books, and maybe one that needs to be written is Jesus help, or some along those lines, and draw on that. We have to close. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, I am. I will post up here in the announcements section. I should be able to do it before I go into my meeting. The assignments, the way they are, the assignments, and for the discussions. I won't open the forums until they'll come on Monday at Monday morning, midnight, 12:01. I really apologize for the screw up on those. I don't know. I had turned on some forums, turned off some forums. Somehow they got turned off early. I don't know. So it was just no rhyme nor reason. Okay, you're ready to pray. Oh, Jesus. Whew. Thank you for the answers to the prayers of that have been prayed for Jerome's wife. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to hear his good news this morning, and Jesus, continue to guide her doctors and her technicians, and to all those who care for her, her medical team, and continue to give them wisdom and discernment as they follow through. I don't mean that in a negative way. As they continue to provide her with the care and the medications and the surgeries and the follow-ups that she needs. May it be as uninvasive as possible. May her pain be taken away. And may she indeed know the fullness of healing that only you can provide, Jesus. Thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to labor in your fields, Lord. And thank you that you trust us to plant, and you trust us to nourish and nurture, and that even sometimes you allow us to harvest. And do keep us mindful and focused on those that you would have us touch, and continue to grant us favor. I'm just really thinking right now about Jeff and these young people that you have given him the privilege of working with, and continue to give him thank you for his insight, the ways you open the eyes, not only just his eyes, his physical eyes that are in his head, but this eyes, the eyes of his soul and his spirit, and the way he able your ears as well, that he's able to hear you and to move through that, as he and as all of us are reading through our readings this week, and we're engaging your gospels in a slightly different way. At least some of us speak to us in ways that not only will we be nurtured, but that we can nurture and inspire those in our congregations and those we get to meet along the way. All right, give us strength, give us resilience, and protect us as we do our work through this weekend and into this next week. Amen. Whoa, check that out. Jeff, I am trying to find the name of a book, and I'll put it up there. I cannot find it, but it is about it's a study that was done on a couple of Scandinavian countries and how they proclaim Christianity, and you'll have these Lutheran churches and whatnot, but people never go to them except when there's a wedding or a funeral, and they'll do baptisms. Though it's important to baptize their children, but there's no connection as to why that is. And I keep thinking about Ione and what you experienced there.
Generational Christians, generational Catholics, cultural Christianity. Yep.
Yeah. There's a study done, I think now it was in the 80s, and it could have even been the 70s. And it was done, anyways, it doesn't matter who did it, but they looked at Catholics and Protestants, and if you were to ask a Protestant who had been out of church, I think that he was looking at 35-year-olds who hadn't been in church since high school, what their religious affiliation was, they would tell you that they weren't affiliated, right? We know that and see that. If you were to ask a Catholic, they would tell you that they were Catholic, even though they hadn't stepped foot all those years. And it really is, we sometimes teasingly, we call them recovering Catholics because of what their experience, those who had negative experiences, but there is so much of that imprint. They've been so imprinted, for better or worse, right? And would that we had an imprint for better or worse. Okay, obviously I have to leave you, and I know you will have to leave. I always keep you longer. Thank you so much. Bye. Okay.